Hey y'all, howdy, welcome to One for the Books. I'm Sandra Broadwell. And those rocks you see behind me in the distance are the Grand Canyon. If you've been following my channel for a while, you might remember a video I did way back in January with my 4 reading goals for the year. I've already completed 2 of those goals, and I only have 3 books left to complete all of my reading goals for 2023. So I thought I would do this little vlog where I am reading the last 3 books that I need to complete all of my goals for the year. One of my goals was to read at least 72 books. I have surpassed that already and am probably on track to read over 100 books this year, which is definitely a record for me. One of my goals was to read a book recommended by my husband, which I did that much earlier this year. One of my goals was to read every book that I bought or acquired in 2022 that I didn't have a chance to read last year. So I have 2 of those books left. The first one is Clay's Quilt by Silas House. This was a Christmas gift from my father-in-law. And I have read 2 other books by Silas House, one this year and one last year. The first one I read was called Lark Ascending, and it was a dystopian near future type story about a young man who is a political and climate change refugee who goes to Ireland from the United States. The second book was called Southernmost, and that book was about a father who is a preacher in a very closed-minded Tennessee Appalachian town, and he gives shelter to a gay couple within his home during a terrible flood that devastates their community, and they ask him to marry them. And it's about the turmoil within his church and how he's trying to raise his son, and just like the bigotry that he experiences and his relationship with his son as he decides to flee that community and raise his son a different way. So Silas House is a beloved literary author from Kentucky, my home state, and this is his debut novel, which came out in 2001. I just started reading this yesterday and I got to page 136. It is 292 pages long, so I'm close to the halfway point, I guess. And I just absolutely adore Silas House's writing. This is not a typical type of book that I would pick up, but I'm really enjoying it so far, just for the writing itself. I'll read you a couple of quotes that have really gripped me so far. One quote right at near the beginning that I really liked. So he's growing up in Appalachia. It says, "When Clay was little, newscasters boasted that the war on poverty was being waged in those very mountains. But if the government had fought any battles close to Free Creek, no one in the holler heard the guns." So I think if you grew up in the Appalachian Mountains or in the South and are familiar with Appalachian culture or Southern culture, this book will really speak to you. It starts off in the prologue. His mother is killed in a car accident when he's like 4 years old. And it's just about his life, his family, growing up in the holler. He is a coal miner, and his relationship with his cousin and his aunts, and really just like trying to piece together who his mother was through stories that he hears and trying to build a life for himself without, kind of being an orphan, but having so much family in the holler. Like I said, I'm about halfway through. There's really not a lot of plot. It's really just a character study. So far, he's met a girl that he's really enamored with. She's a fiddler and is trying to get out of an abusive marriage. He just uncovered a box of his mother's things that he didn't know existed. So it's just like little pieces of his life like that. The writing is just absolutely beautiful. I'm super glad to finally be getting around to this one because I've really enjoyed the 2 other books by Silas House that I've already read. The other book that I need to read to complete my reading every book that I bought in 2022 goal is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This one I got at a used bookstore for like $5, and I've heard really amazing things about this. This is a fantasy novel that is based on Native American mythology, and that's basically all I know about it. But November is Native American Heritage Month, so I thought this would be the perfect month to pick up this book. And then the final book for this vlog, I don't have a physical copy of, so I'll be checking it out from the library, but it is a nonfiction book called Gathering Moss, and it is by Robin Wall Kimmerer, who is the author of Braiding Sweetgrass. So I read Braiding Sweetgrass last year, and the goal that I'm trying to complete with this book was I had a goal that every author that I read for the very first time in 2022, if I gave their book 4 stars or higher, I would read another book by them in 2023. So I read Braiding Sweetgrass last year and I absolutely loved it. And I was fortunate enough that where I used to live, Lexington, Kentucky, Robin Wall Kimmerer actually came to speak there earlier this year in April, and I got to hear her speak, and then I got to meet her afterwards, which was just an absolutely lovely experience. She is a phenomenal human being, and I'm so excited to read another book by her because her writing was just so gorgeous. And I think Gathering Moss is a lot shorter than Braiding Sweetgrass, so this hits 2 of the kind of themes for November, Native American Heritage Month and Nonfiction November, because it's a nonfiction book by a Native American author. So those are the 3 books I'm going to be tackling for this vlog. I'll also be showing you guys the Grand Canyon as we explore the national park and anywhere else that we might happen to go over the course of time that I read these 3 books. I'll let you know and check in with you soon. So yesterday, Michael and I hiked to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and back up again. It was a super grueling, like 18.5-mile hike. We went down what's called the South Kaibab Trail and then like dipped our fingers in the Colorado River, explored Phantom Ranch, and then we hiked back up the Bright Angel Trail. So we were on the South Rim the whole time. It was really incredible. I'm sure I have inserted the footage already. We saw mountain goats, we saw helicopters. I mean, the geology is just super duper cool, and I'm really glad that I got to share a little bit of that with you all. Our calves are very, very sore today. After we got back from that hike, I finished Clay's quilt, and Silas is just an incredible writer. I think I talked a little bit about it already when I was about halfway through. There was a bit of a twist that happened in the middle where we found out more about his mother's death. It wasn't a car wreck like the reader was potentially led to believe at the beginning. That's certainly what I thought happened. And once you find out what happened to his mother, everything kind of gets thrown into more stark relief about why he is so obsessed with learning more about who his mother was and trying to piece together memories of her from stories that he hears from other people. He was 4 years old when he passed away. And then an event happens towards the end of the book that is a mirror to what happened to his mother. It's very traumatizing for him, and it's about his quilt, his patchwork of people who help him get through that, and just about his life living in Appalachia. It is an unapologetic view of Appalachian life, and it is just absolutely beautifully written. I would consider this a character study, very light on plot, not typically my type of thing, but if you're into that, highly, highly recommend that you pick this one up. And so now that I have finished Clay's quilt, I am moving on to Black Sun, and I am super duper excited to get into this one. I'm probably gonna start reading it as soon as I shut off the camera, so wish me luck. All right, so halfway through Black Sun now, and this book is incredible. Possibly the coolest world that I have read this year, which is saying a lot because I just read an all-time new favorite series. But the world that lives in Black Sun is just... My cat's meowing. You can see her approaching over there. The world in Black Sun is so cool. So this is based on Native American mythology. And for one, just like that alone, I think is such an incredible way to experience fantasy because it's so unlike any other place that I have read before. Sorry, we're having a cat break. Hi, baby. What's up? You want to say hello to everyone? This is Pogi. Hi. Okay, back to the book. I also love in this hardback edition, the very front cover on the inside is a map of the world, which, you know, normally you like flip to a page and it's like a black and white map. And then the very last cover on the back is like a blown up map of a particular city in the story. So absolutely love that. I think that's gorgeous. And I just am a nerd about maps, so I love that. But anywho, it kicks off with a bang. Like the first chapter is just gutting. It starts off from the perspective of a boy who I think is 12, and his mother is preparing him for this ceremony where she tells him that he is going to grow up to become a god. He is a part of the Carrion Crow tribe, and she tells him that he's going to be like their resurrected like crow god, basically. So the first chapter, she's like preparing him for this ceremony that has something to do with the eclipse, and she says it's the crow god eating the sun, so the Black Sun. And then we get the perspective of two other characters. Like I said, I'm about halfway through at the moment, just a little under half. And basically in the first half, there's 3 different perspective characters. You follow that little boy, but then it jumps like 20 years in the future. It goes back and forth to his past and like how he was raised and like the really traumatic things that happened to him. The other perspective characters in the first half of the book are a woman who is a sailor, and she has some magical powers based on the tribe that she's from to do with water, and it's called Her Song. That all seems really cool. She is in jail when you first are introduced to her perspective, and then she is freed by a nobleman who wants to hire her to sail basically across the sea in a really, really short amount of time. He's gonna pay her really well for it, but he already like has her crew assigned and has the boat provisioned, and they just need to like get on and go. And so she's trying to, as a woman and as like this magical tribe that a lot of people are fearful of or have like misinformation about, and she's trying to like gain the respect of her crew as they do this like impossible ocean journey. The third main character is a sun priestess who lives in like the capital city, and she is from a very poor family, and normally the priestesses and priests in this society are chosen from the very privileged noble families. So she is constantly in a bit of a battle for respect, and she feels that the priesthood as a whole like used to be the pinnacle of their society, the leadership, everyone looked to them, and over the last several decades it seems like that power has slowly drained away and people have less respect for the priesthood than they used to. And so she wants to restore that, but she has an uphill battle because of her background. Just right before this point in the book that I'm at now, I was just introduced to a new perspective character who is a young man in his early 20s who was trained at the war college, but his tribe is from the capital city, and he has just found out that his mother has died, and so he is now traveling back to the capital for her funeral. So those are the perspectives. There's lots of different things going on, but the really exciting thing about this plot so far is that the entire book is a countdown to an event called Convergence, which I believe is the day that the young boy that we first started with is supposed to become a god. And he is on the boat with the sailor traveling to the capital city for the convergence. And so it starts like 20 years from convergence, and then you have like 20 days from convergence and 13 days from convergence. And so everything that's happening is like a slow countdown, and it'll occasionally like bounce back and give you more perspective from the past. But the whole book is building up to this event, which I believe is when all of our characters will come together and shit is gonna go down. There's lots of interesting tension and dynamics between the different tribes that live together in the capital city, as well as the other cities nearby in this country. The tension is not just between the tribes themselves, but the balance between like civil government and religious governance, and it all seems like it's coming to a head. So I'm super excited to see what's going to happen in the second half of the book, and I will let you guys know once I have wrapped this up. But it's super awesome. It's super awesome so far. Hey y'all, it is November 13th and I have been terrible about giving updates for this vlog. So I finished Black Sun and this was a stunning book. Absolutely 5 stars. Like I said in the first clip, the countdown aspect, the really unique world building, the characters, the reincarnated God rising to power, the intrigue of old religions and new religions coming to a head, and the structure of the society was just beyond cool. So rather than moving on to Gathering Moss, which was the next book I said I was going to do for this vlog, I just went ahead and read the sequel because I just wanted more. I wanted more of this. The sequel to Black Sun is called Fevered Star. It starts basically directly after the events of the first book. Literally the same day or like the next day is where the second book picks up, because the first book ends in kind of a bang and there wasn't a whole lot of resolution to those events. So Fevered Star, in that sense, I wouldn't say it is entirely middle book syndrome, but it is like dealing with the repercussions of the events of the first book because it takes place so soon after. And so the characters that we focused on in the first book have scattered. They are more broken, they're more conflicted, and just seeing their inner turmoil as they had to grapple with some really heavy decisions and how that was going to affect their lives and their world was, to me, just super compelling. It wasn't as good as Black Sun, but in some ways it gave me more of the characters to sink my teeth into, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I cannot wait. The third book in the series, Mirrored Heavens, comes out next year, and I'm so glad that I have caught up on this series now and will be hotly anticipating the release of book 3. If you saw my last vlog, you know that this month is NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, and I have been avidly doing that. I'm averaging at this point in the month about 2,200 words a day, so I should definitely meet the 50,000 word goal for my fantasy novel that I'm working on. But that means that I have a lot less free time to read this month. I just wanted to go ahead and give a little update on that, since I'm not sure I'm going to do any more NaNoWriMo specific content, and just let you guys know that at this point in the month, a little before the halfway point, I have, I think, close to 30,000 words written. So I'm definitely ahead of where I need to be to hit those marks, and feeling really strong. And then now I have started Gathering Moss by Robin Wall Kimmerer, who, as I mentioned in my first clip, I read Braiding Sweetgrass by her last year, and I got to meet her in person earlier this year. So super excited to dive into this book. Unfortunately, Libby did not have a ebook copy that I could borrow, so I am listening to it on audiobook. And audiobook is not my preferred format. I prefer to physically read either with a physical book or an ebook. So this is only the third audiobook that I've listened to this year, but it's read by the author herself, which I always enjoy a lot more, especially with nonfiction works. I haven't gotten very far into Gathering Moss yet, but it's just so beautiful. She writes in a very poetic style, and if you love poetry about nature or science that waxes more poetically, I think she is definitely the writer that you should pick up. She is both a Native American and a scientist. She tries to marry these two disparate worlds together and through her nonfiction works, and it's just absolutely beautiful. I will update you all again once I have more to say about Gathering Moss. Right now we are at Zion National Park, or right outside of it. It's where we're camped. So you guys are getting at least 2 national parks in this vlog. So how cool is that? We are hoping to get a permit to do the subway hike, which is a really popular hike. When we were here a couple of years ago, we did Angel's Landing, which is like the big, like iron rungs, steep hike. But this year we're hoping to do the subway, which is like a slot canyon. That's supposed to be really cool. So hopefully I'll get to show you guys some footage of that before this vlog is out. I'll check in again with you guys soon. So as you all saw in the last couple of clips, we did get the permit for the subway hike in Zion National Park, which was absolutely gorgeous. It was a little bit not like what we expected, but it was really, really cool. It was a lot of route finding along the creek, trying to figure out the best way to scramble over rocks. And then once we actually got to the subway formation, the water there was not nearly as deep as we expected. And so we actually way overpacked for the hike, but it was a really, really beautiful, just amazing experience, and I'm so glad that we were able to get a permit for it. It seems like permits this time of year are actually pretty easy to get, so we just got it as a walk-up, which was great for us because we don't plan ahead very well. And so this is the last clip for this vlog because I am giving up on Gathering Moss. Unfortunately, I listened to about the first 2 hours of the audiobook. It's only about 8 hours long, and I don't know if it was the fact that it is an audiobook or if it was the book itself, but it just was not engaging me. Like I mentioned in my last clip, I do really love Robin Wall Kimmerer's writing, and I agree with everything I said the first time, but this one, as opposed to Braiding Sweetgrass, seemed to focus a lot more on the science itself rather than storytelling as much. And mosses are not super charismatic types of plants, and that's one of the things that she talks about in this book, is that they're very underappreciated, and because of that they don't have common names most of the time. And so just hearing her say the scientific Latin names of all of these plants that I don't know what they are over and over and over again got really repetitive, had nothing to really visualize, and I don't know if physically reading it would have been easier, but I just found my mind drifting a lot. Like the other audiobooks that I listened to this year, one of them was Know My Name by Chanel Miller, and while I was doing that one I was working on a jigsaw puzzle, and that helped me a lot because I felt like I was doing something and not just sitting and not doing anything, which is what I generally feel like when I listen to audiobooks. And then the second book that I listened to on audiobook was Southernmost by Silas House, and for that one I was actually working on our van. I was like painting the interior, and that also worked really well. I like to have something to do with my hands. I don't have a lot of those opportunities here in the van now. Like I don't have room for a jigsaw puzzle. We don't have the space for it. And so I tried to like download some mobile games on my phone and play those while I was listening with the sound turned off, and then I just couldn't, the games took too much focus away from the book, and I just wasn't engaged. And I tried various different things. I tried like laying in the hammock and listening to it and like doing these other things, and I just couldn't commit. So rather than try and force myself to finish the book, I'm just going to DNF it, and I might come back to it again someday in physical format if I'm able to get my hands on a copy, but I don't feel bad about not finishing it at the moment, just because it's not what I want to be doing, and I have to go with that. That's a little disappointing to end the note of finishing all my reading goals with the DNF, but I still feel really proud of myself for finishing all of these goals. And I think I had like 30 something books that I needed to complete in order to hit all of my goals for the year, and I've done it now. So that's really exciting. The next vlog that you'll see on my channel will be me catching up on some series that I started this year that I haven't fully caught up on yet. So keep an eye out for that. And I will see you guys again soon. Thanks so much for tuning in and hanging out with me for a little bit today. As always, please be kind, read books, and hit the subscribe button below for more bookish content to come. I'll see you next time.